Media and society are two very important aspects of contemporary social realities in any part of the world. But it is more important if the society is on the path of modernization, is going through democratization, and is a multicultural, complex social system. India is a case where all these three features are available. As we are engaged in modernization, we are a democracy in the making, and we are a multicultural society with many languages, many communities, many faith systems, many customs, and of course multiple media culture, because right from print media to internet, we have all forms of media system developing in our country, along with the information revolution as it has been inaugurated since the beginning of this century. We have two choices in media society communications research. And this choice making is very important for determining the next steps, that is, identifying a theoretical framework, recognizing the key concepts, choosing the instruments, and locating the site for information and data for our research. The first frame of media society communications research may be media-centric, where we study the media system as the basis of our engagement. And when we want to study a media system, we can study the media culture, the sociology of media, meaning what kind of people are there in the media, who are focused by the media, who are the people behind the computers and cameras, according to their gender, caste, class, age, region, ethnicity, religion, nationality. We can also look at the economics of media, the input and output, the market and media relationship, the cost and benefit aspects, which operate separately in the public sector and in the private sector. One is guided by public interest, the other is guided by profit motive. We can also look at the politics of media, where you have certain silent messages coming through the media text, media construction, media images, the audiovisual methods of communicating political ideas or ideas about contemporary politics. So if you have focus on media, then you can think about further specification of whether we want to study sociology of media, economics of media, culture of media, or politics of media. If you want to study media and society communication systems with focus on society, then you have to look at society's construction in terms of value system or ideas and ideologies, in terms of institutional framework, from marriage and family to religion and state, and in terms of processes, from socialization to cooperation, conflict, competition, social violence, social harmony. In any case, after understanding your focus, after clarifying your key questions, then you have to move and contextualize your study. we have to look at the context of our questions. What has been the historical context? What has been the political and economic context? What has been the national and local context? What has been the global context? Any study has a context, just like we all live in an atmosphere, and it varies from place to place, season to season. Similarly, the social questions have different contexts, and those contexts have a bearing upon our capacity for research and understanding. One good example of contextualizing is the reports from the government of India or reports of United Nations about press and media on an annual basis. They give us the dimensions of expansion of media, the reach of media, the impact of media, and its plurality in terms of who shares how much, in terms of audience, readership, advertisement, and other aspects. So first thing is to contextualize your research purpose, your research focus. Then the second thing is to get into the field-related strengths and limitations. We cannot study everything everywhere. We have certain limitations from the field and certain advantages of the field. If you want to study a particular aspect, you have to see how much of documentation is available, how much of information is available. Or if you don't want to go into the details of the government records or private records, and you only want to have opinion survey, then you have to see the questions which you want to explore, how much is articulated by the people about those questions. There may be value loaded questions, there may be questions of faith, there may be certain socially and politically correct and incorrect situations. So the message from the field requires a preliminary familiarization with the field from where we want to get the data. After understanding the context and the field situation, then we come back to the available studies, which we call survey of literature. Unless it is some kind of an exceptionally new situation, for example, social media or internet-based communication, which is a very recent phenomena, not more than 10 years old for most of us in India and South Asia, there will be always possibility of some pre-existing analysis, some pre-existing material, and that is very important step so that you don't get trapped into reinventing the wheel, meaning studying problems which are already explored and repeating what has been already reported. It will be a waste of your time, and it will be also a kind of methodological mistake not to have a survey of relevant literature. This literature could be of both kinds, through primary sources, means government reports, company reports, and it could be also secondary basis, where you have pre-existing surveys, analyzed, similar research projects undertaken. Sometimes it may not be available with reference to your area of study, meaning your district, your province, your country, but it may be available, same question, similar theoretical framework and similar research strategy in another context, and that will give you a chance of a comparative view of the available information regarding your research questions. After surveying the available literature, you can easily identify the mistakes or the gaps and the wisdom which has been created by the pre-existing literature. You have both plus and minus situation. You already have certain lessons from the pre-existing material, the scholarly work, and you also have certain obvious gaps which are clear after surveying the existing literature. So it gives us an advantage of knowing the field yourself and as it has been perceived by the others. And you also see what are the obvious requirements of any new initiative. Same old question can have new answers provided you have new sources of information or new technique of data gathering. So both technique wise and field visit strategy wise, survey of literature makes you more informed, more empowered. After survey of literature, then you have to decide what is going to be your basic research questionnaire or question set as it is guided by your research objectives. It's like deciding what you want to get from the market, is like determining what are the places you want to visit in a particular city or a village which you are visiting for the first time. Once your objects are clear, then you know what you don't want to do or what you don't have to do. A good research is not only based upon what is to be done, it is also guided by what is not to be done, so that there is clarity in questioning, there is specificity in getting the figures and facts correct, and there is no diversion, there is no deviation, there is no obfuscation of your purpose and your objects. After we have decided the research questions, then we have to identify who are the sources of information for us, meaning from where I will get the objective responses. And it could be individuals, it could be institutions, it could be groups, it could be simple field itself. Here, the nature of the field and the nature of research questions together determine our research methods. The research methods are the way, the instruments, the techniques put together create what we call research methods. They could be effective research methods, they could be ineffective research methods. And this is again determined by pre-existing experience. People have used a variety of research methods to study your kind of research problem, and you have to see whose methods were more effective and whose methods were basically minimalist in terms of results and in terms of finding the truth which was the purpose of the research. These are days of multidisciplinary research strategies, meaning utilization of a combination of techniques used in various social sciences as well as literary studies. Social sciences have recognized that interdisciplinary research strategies are much more in-depth. They are giving us much more meaningful material for observation and analysis, and therefore a judicious combination of research techniques of sociology, history, economics, political science, social psychology will always be much better than just one-dimensional research method system where we follow only one branch of social sciences. And often it is also very useful to have some feedback from the literature, creative literature, because these days literature is also becoming a very important source of ideas and information, concepts and categories for social scientists. And therefore, we do have useful engagement with literature, novels, stories, poetry, in areas where much objective material or secondary material or pre-existing social scientific studies are not there. So, in determining our research methods, we have to have an awareness of interdisciplinary possibilities as well as engagement with imaginative writers and authors who have used power of imagination through creative art forms, particularly novel, story, play, poetry, etc. After we have decided the methodology and methods, then we have to see the time and resource management. Any research can be done in many ways in terms of time and resource management. These are days of rapid responses. People are interested in finding the facts, there's no doubt about it, but they're not interested in finding the facts through methods which take too much of time. Now, this time dimension of any research is always a subjective question. How much time is enough for studying a particular problem? These are times of qualitative and quantitative research combination, and these are also times of use of computers in social science studies. Therefore, the previous requirement of time has been reduced substantially with the technological inputs coming from computer-based softwares and new uses of computation methods and data analysis methods. There is also possibility of documentation through audio-visual techniques which were earlier not available. And as they say, one picture is more communicating than 1,000 words. So the combination of various strategies and various techniques has become the challenge for social scientists in studying media society communications situations in these times. The old methods are still very useful. They require surveys through questionnaires and schedules. They require sampling. Now, in case of old methods, we have to recognize that the selection of sample is always the basis for a sound analysis. In cases of a homogeneous situation, we don't need very large sample size. If you are studying poverty and you have only taken people living below poverty line, then you don't need a very large sample. But yes, if you want to study poverty in a multi-class, multi-occupational, multi-caste situation, then the diversity has to be captured through relatively larger sample. Similarly, if there is a homogeneous society, community, like most of the European countries, monolingual, unireligious, by and large middle class, then the sample size doesn't have to be very large. But if you're trying to study a country like India or Indonesia, where you have a very great diversity in terms of economic, social, cultural, and political indicators, then your samples has to be larger than those situations where there is too much of uniformity or quite a bit of homogeneity in social order. It's like trying to study a pot of rice versus studying a pot of khichdi where there are many grains, and therefore you have to have representation of all the grains, whereas in the previous situation you can just take a few grains of rice because all of them are of similar kind. Finally, when you are managing your time, you have to have enough of, just like money, you have to have enough of saved time, because when you visit the field, there are many unexpected factors waiting for you. Local disturbances, breakdown of your communication with the community, your own time management strategy. And therefore, it's always useful to have a strategy where you have a pre-research visit of the field for familiarization, a major part dedicated for the essential core part of the field work, and some time left for a second visit for last minute eventualities and contingencies, so that if there is something which has erupted all of a sudden out of your collected data which requires cross-checking, or you find certain parts missing which were not covered in your original strategy and they are relevant to be covered, then you must have enough time to be there again to make up for the gaps and present a study which is without any loopholes. Now the time comes for data analysis. Data analysis is something which is the essential part of research activity, because data has to be speaking for itself, and that voice from the data, voice from the facts can come only when we have a proper data analysis system. These are the days of computer supported fact analysis, and it will be always wise to have an idea of availability of the variety of softwares for data analysis stage. A computer friendly strategy will maximize our capacity to bring the message from the field for the people who are interested in our findings. So there's always a requirement of pre-testing of the instruments. This pre-testing requires your engagement with the field in a representative manner, so that if you have a diversity in your sampling, each component of the diversity are represented during the pre-testing. And maybe that the pre-testing suggests you to have multiple strategies. Most of the research today is guided by a strategy where you have the possibility of qualitative as well as quantitative data combination. After having the total picture together in the form of various categories and classifications, each category or classification will be better articulated if we have possibility of certain case studies representing each of the categories present in the field in terms of data gathered about media-society relationship. For example, if we want to study the impact of media on society, then we go to the readers or viewers, and we have to see their self-perception. Maybe that their self-perception is not accurate because they are not accounting for multiple factor situation, and they are putting all the responsibilities on the media. An interesting example can come from election studies, where the winners often attribute their victory to many factors, starting from their candidate, to their party organization, to the support from the people, to the failure of the opponent, as well as some support from the media and publicity. But often the losers are found to be blaming the media factor. They argue that, well, everything was going right, but the voters got misguided, misinformed, and there was a media hype which made my opponent look better than me, and media motivated, mediated, monitored, and mobilized people against us. It is famous also that in the historical contest between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, the presidential debates presented Mr. Kennedy as young, smart, articulate, and that made him get quite a few extra votes in contrast to in competition with Mr. Richard Nixon, who looked a little older, slow, a bit unclear, and of course not so articulate and dashing. But this is not the case all the time. So just going by the impression of the respondents will not be a good strategy. We'll have to cross-check about the other factors. Most of the factors may be visible, but many of the factors may be hidden. Now, how to get to the hidden factors? You cannot get the hidden factors by asking people, because even they are probably not aware. Then you have to go by inference. How to get to the factors which are only available through inference? As I said, you need to look at the context. You need to look at the secondary sources. You need to look at the other methods which are what you call observation-based methods, and not so much of conversation-based methods. Because the conversation-based methods apply meaningfully only where there is not too much of subjectivity and too much of diversity. Observation-based methods will be relevant in those situations where there are many perspectives, there are many angles to the same reality. There is highly contested ground reality. Today, we do see that media studies are often commissioned to look at the capacity of media to motivate people about positive values. It is very interesting that whether it is the democratic values or projects of social justice or creating social unity and harmony, we do look at media as a very important platform. And it's partly correct also. But media alone cannot be taken for the responsibilities, because there are other aspects also which make the social reality: the class situation, the caste situation, the historical trajectories and fractures, and of course the ideological situation. So, looking at the social complexities, media society interaction pattern studies have to see what are the areas in which media will be influential. For example, advertisement. Of course, market gets introduced to the people through two things. One is demand and supply pattern, and the other is packaging of the projects and products by the media. And in these times of mass society culture, media becomes the first base, the first messenger for the people to get to know the new things. It is another matter that after you receive the message from the media, it is processed by every individual through many filters. One is their own personal filter, then their family, then their peer group or neighborhood, then their caste, class, community, religion, occupation, age, gender. But it never reduces the value of the media as messenger, and that makes media society relationship research a very relevant engagement, very meaningful exercise. Similarly, when you have to appeal to the people for any issue at a very large scale, media will be the first instrument, media will be the first forum available for the people to be reached, because as we know, television and radio has reached beyond all our imaginations. No other single technology or platform has so much of attention and reach as the present day mass media. But this must not make us believe that anything which is processed through mass media and presented to the people gets immediate approval. We have a great example about the problem of women in society. Day in and day out, we are trying to present a positive message that people must get out of this patriarchal mindset and respect women as individuals and not be aggressive about them as sex object or weaker sex. But is that changing the attitude? It is reported that higher media density areas have been found to be reporting higher rate of female feticide. So it is not obvious that if something is coming from the media, it will immediately affect us positively. We cannot expect our society to be guided by the media in automatic manner, even if we are presenting the best of the virtues and the best of the cases and campaigns. So that's one side of the story. Similarly, the other side of the story is that society cannot influence the media beyond a certain level and limit. Society wants the media to be always on the positive side. Society always wants the media to be instrument of goodness, cultivating kindness and compassion. But media is a little autonomous. Autonomous because of its own technology, because of its own capacity. Most of the states have been found to be nervous about media power. Therefore, in the last 100 years, there have been many patterns of controlling the media by the state in the name of society. And it has become an interesting aspect of media-society relationship research. How can society guide and monitor and maintain a certain level of engagement with the media system so that the negative influences, the promotion of consumerism, the promotion of greed may be prevented. It is said that there is a box office formula in the film industry. There is a pressure of TRP rating in television system. There is an issue of readership expansion and advertisement in print media. And these are all facts of media culture. A media system has to be viable, has to be legitimate, and has to be interesting. And in a free media society where there is freedom of expression, there is always this pressure of the competitor. In case of a competitive culture, media develops its own grammar, which is often at variance with the state and the laws of the land. We have this often reflected in cases of film industry where there is problem of vulgarity, violence and obscenity. And this has been managed by creating several layers of viewership through some kind of semi-governmental system of censorship. And that creates another logic of media society communication relationship. Similarly, in the television industry, there is a self-appointed reference and evaluation committee by the profession's representatives, companies' representatives themselves. It is true that media has an autonomy. Media is also part of culture industry. Media has the potential of motivating people and becoming from monitor to monster. Often in pursuit of power, people are found to be using media in a very effective manner. Most of the political parties in the West have their own media section. In countries like India, it is still developing, but certainly in several instances, the political parties are owning channels. Of course, they have been having their newspapers. Now they are also going to be using film industry. At the moment, this is a great transition period. They call it period of media revolution. India is going through a great transformation. We have moved from bullock cart to cyber mart according to a set of observers in a very compressed period of less than a century. This compressed transformation has its own advantages and disadvantages. Therefore, there is a large agenda for studying media society relationship patterns by the media researchers. The only caution is that we have to study systematically. We have to be reliable in our method and we have to be convincing in our results. It is one of the growing areas in the field of social science studies, and I hope that the last few minutes which you gave to observe this presentation will give you enough clarity for strategizing your next engagement as a researcher in the field of media and society. And now it will be very relevant if you have some questions or observations to make this discussion more engaging and participatory. Thank you.